How's it going, everyone? This is Brad Williams with Over 40 Fitness Hacks. I have with me in this season a new co-star, Mr. Dave Frost with Well Past 40 LLC. How's it going, Dave?
It's going well, Brad. Happy holidays. And, any day that ends in a Y is a great day to natter about health and fitness. At least that's my hypothesis. So thanks. How are you?
Absolutely. Doing well, doing well.
Good.
So Dave, let's move on to the next topic here. With the COVID crisis, the pandemic, and more specifically for seniors, if you look at all the stats of COVID and, whatever you think about the politics on it and the percentages, if they're correct or not, it does seem to be affecting seniors and people with other disabilities more than, some other generations. What are some of the things that, you've been thinking about or talking about what some of your clients are doing to, help immunity and just more, senior specific?
I'm I'm a little bit of a dirtbag. My kids will tell me that. My wife will tell me that. But the classic, flu season is not supposed to be bad this year. Why? Because people, as much as most of us dislike wearing masks, wear masks, face masks. And in fact, California, we know that it's mandated indoor for another month to hopefully offset Thanksgiving and maybe Christmas with this Omicron COVID spike. It's a virus. Viruses do what viruses do. They spread in a nonlinear fashion. So masks are important, social distancing, of course. But you know what is really astounding? 20 seconds of physical washing of your hands. Happy birthday twice. You may have heard it. There's nothing as important as washing your hands, not to get them, raw or anything, but just the physical scrubbing, not the soap that you use or any of that. The physical scrubbing for at least 20 seconds is a huge enabler. Doesn't mean you won't get the flu or COVID. It certainly reduces your chances.
Yeah.
How do we get, we touch our eyes and then, through the eyes, through the mouth is generally how we get these viruses. Blink a lot, keep your eyes moist, and certainly wash your hands. But the big five after that, we talk about what Dr. Fauci talks about. I don't want to say overdoses, but vitamin D, which, by the way, really isn't a vitamin because our body produces it. Yeah. But vitamin D3 in excess of the government's minimum daily requirement, I think, is huge for boosting immunity. Doesn't mean you won't get COVID, but I think if you get it, probably is going to help your chances of fighting the cytokine storm. So sunlight, 20 minutes a day, doesn't mean you have to get sunburned. 20 minutes a day, hand, shoulder, feet, arms, is probably enough. Then don't hop in a shower right away because it takes a while for your body to, your derm to work its magic and generate D3. But I certainly take more than the MDR of vitamin D3, but I still try to get outside as much as possible. So that's number one, sunlight, vitamin D. Number two, anti-inflammatory eating. If your gut is misbehaving, number one, you're not producing one of the happy hormones, serotonin, which is where most of serotonin is generated in your gut. But that's inflammation. If you have a leaky gut, our garden wall leaks and the fungus and the viruses and the bacteria in our gut tend to inflame our bodies. You already have inflammation. Now, there's good inflammation, exercise-induced inflammation, which incidentally causes nice cytokine trickles, but we don't want the cytokine storm without our body's ability to counter it, right? That's the issue. Our body doesn't know what this new invader is, this new inflammation is, and it becomes pretty much a thing for a real challenge for the lungs when people with pre-existing conditions, which tends to say older people, adult diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, those folks. So who dies from COVID? Unfortunately, there's higher incidence of African Americans and Latinas, but there's certainly higher incidence of older people because they have pre-existing conditions and their basic immunity may be lowered, so the storm may take effect, a perfect storm in a bad way. So clean eating is huge to stay alive, but also to hopefully avoid or mitigate viruses. And if I can give it an aside, not COVID, I had the shingles. I had the shingles vaccine, the shot. I got shingles in October. And luckily it was mild. I had the classic shingle band from breastbone to backbone of blisters and religious kinds of pain. Like one day a donkey kicked me in the ribs and the next day an ice pick between the ribs. But I had the mild case, and I think it was my immunity is pretty good, although not good enough to avoid the chickenpox virus. I had chickenpox as a kid. Mm-hmm. So my point is, the viruses are always there. They're in us. But how's our immunity? And in my case, I had the vaccine. I'm a pretty vital guy. I think unless I overtrain, my immunity is pretty darn good. I have my vitamin D. I eat clean. I get my exercise. I sleep well. I hug a lot. I think my quality of life is pretty darn good. So when I had shingles, I was really dumbfounded. However, the shingles that I had was minor. So what we hear about COVID, now I'm a layman again, what we hear about COVID, I've had colleagues of mine who have had COVID and said they felt like they coughed up a lung. Some people were analyzed with COVID, didn't know they had it. And I've had colleagues die from it. I had a classmate, I went in, my pre-med classmate, Glenn was his name, he died from COVID. So you never know how you're going to respond, but you do want to have your immunity boosted. So I didn't get through all five. Moderate exercise, because exercise by definition inflames your body in a good way. You don't want to climb Mount Everest to avoid COVID, although there's probably not many COVID germs on the top of Mount Everest. But being at altitude in that type of exercise is extraordinarily inflammatory. So moderate exercise regularly. 7 hours of sleep is a guideline. A restorative sleep is important. Hugs to generate oxytocin, a great positive happy hormone. Hugs, laughing, humor, really important. We mentioned vitamin D3, fresh air, and then the clean eating, those five. And then, of course, you could talk about not smoking and alcohol in moderation, lifestyle things, but sleep, moderate exercise, hugs, humor, and laughing, vitamin D3, fresh air, and clean eating. If you do all those things, your chances of A, getting COVID, B, having a lesser awful after of getting COVID are much better. Unfortunately, some males get it more than males die more than females. And some socioeconomic groups die in greater numbers, unfortunately. But a lot of it, I think, other than what you're born with, your gene pool from what you're born with, there are things we can and should do to boost our immunity. So important, as we know. I mean, we've lost 800,000 to COVID. There probably will be a whole lot more, sadly, but many of them had pre-existing conditions and did not have their immunity at a good enough level to survive.
Yep. You know, this whole experience for the last 2 years, you know, just going through your 5 tips right there, I think the overall masses only did one, you know, the humor. All they did was watch Netflix, and, you know, that's all they could do. And, you know, and the one thing they pushed in the first, I remember 90 days, was don't go outside, don't do anything, hide. That is so bad, because, you know, vitamin D3 in my line of work, I already am a cave dweller, going from house to gym to other gym to back. You know, it's to get outside is so huge, and we definitely screwed that up the first year.
But, you know, like a habit. Hey, the government, God bless the government, because it's done great studies like on chronic pain. But our government didn't know what it didn't know about something we'd never faced since the Spanish flu of 1914 or 1918, when they thought it was a bacteria, because they didn't know what a virus was, because the virus is so small they couldn't see it in a microscope. But when you face something that you've never faced before, I say go back to first principles. What is clean living? Sunlight,
Yes, there we
bonding
go.
with nature, getting outside, not being inside where the air isn't free and fresh,
Yeah.
exercising to sweat, so you have the good inflammation, not and hopefully your ability to counter the COVID cytokine inflammation is better. And what about the power of sleep, Brad? What a wonderful way to spend 1/3 of your adult years
Yeah.
horizontal, in the
Right,
bedroom.
yeah.
It's so important. It
Brain
is
function, muscular function, everything. Just
avoiding dementia-related diseases. Exercise and sleep are so important for brain health. And golly, we just life is tough. I get it. Like you mentioned, we spend there's 4 F's. Again, a simple guide. My 4F model: fight, flight, feed, or frolic. I would much more love to spend time feeding and frolicking, and then fighting and fleeing.
yeah.
I don't want to fight COVID. I don't want to flee it. I'd much rather get on with life. So I was a little leery when you mentioned 2 years ago, stay inside. Don't be outside. Well, don't be outside and swap spit with somebody, but but get outside and do what immunity means. Yeah, first principle. You bet.
Yep. And one more comment on that topic, just from my sphere of influence and anyone in the medical profession. I have doctors, nurses, people all in the health and wellness. And the one thing getting all the stories back of who's actually dying, who's actually, having the issues. And, yes, it's the older, obviously, people with pre-existing conditions. But, when they were saying that, yeah, a lot of, young people too are going. From just my sphere of influence, I just like to comment that what I learned from what they saw out there, every single one of them started working out more, because the one thing they saw was of the younger people specifically that were in there and not making it from COVID, no one in there was what we would deem athletic. Maybe they worked out once in a while or once a week, but from what they were seeing on their checklist of everything, smokers, heavy drinking, no one was in there that was running, 10 miles a week or working out 4 to 5 days a week, nothing. So that instilled them to start going 7 days a week. So that was the kind of the feeling I got that whole first year, and kept me on track myself too. Cause I could have slipped into the Netflix and drinking at home like everyone else was doing. But, even being at the lower threshold of the stats, I was still a little bit scared myself. You got to keep going, build that immunity back up or as high as you can.
Absolutely. And if I may share to pile on to what you said, Brad, I don't recall the research group that published this, but about a year ago, it came out that those folks that had a strong grip, measured by a handheld dynamometer, those that had what's considered a strong grip, for men, it's like 70 kilograms per square inch. For women, different, and age different. The older you are, it slacks off a little.
Yeah.
But those folks that had general strength, as measured by grip strength, did not die from COVID at the same rate as weaker peers. Isn't that duh?
And I'm sure a lot of those stats are still being compiled, and maybe in another couple of years, some of that will come out. We're like, oh my God. But I mean, it's just, like you said, it just goes back to what we would consider clean living.
Get a grip. Yeah.
Work out, sweat a little bit, get some sunlight. Maybe don't go to huge masses of people for now. Maybe, it's still okay to say hi to your neighbor and talk to them, but just clean living for a while. So I'm hoping that we learn something from this, and next time, we don't have to panic so much, and yeah, cross our fingers.
Yeah. And as John Wade once said, I think it was in a movie, don't recall which one, life is tough enough without being stupid. And I'm not calling people stupid, but think about actions. In California, we know, Brad, that there's this mandate, inside mask required. I won't mention the wonderful retail store, which was founded in Pasadena. But of course, every employee wears a mask, but why is 1/3 of the clients without a mask on in the presence of a mandate? So It's the government. I get it, but I have to shop because, it's the holidays and, you got to get a poinsettia and maybe a little eggnog and, some appropriate, it's okay to go off the health diet for a little bit, except remember that 2 pounds of adult weight, most adults put on 2 pounds from Thanksgiving to New Year's Day. They don't take it off.
Yeah.
So over the years, that's where the fatness comes from. It's this most wonderful time of the year. It's not wonderful when you generate white fat. So I hope people will drink more water, get outside for fresh air instead of eating a lot of Christmas cookies, and avoid that 2 pounds because it's so hard to take it off year after year.
Yep. Especially over 40, 50, 60, it just gets worse. So I got to get cleaner. Well, Dave, I just wanted to thank you for being on our show. It's been a pleasure. For all our listeners out there, if they want to get a hold of you or check out your book, do you have any social media profiles, website, or where can they find your book?
Well, even in my encore years, I do have a couple of social media channels. Twitter, DEF Trainer. DEF, my initials, P for personal trainer. Facebook, Wellness and Fitness Coaching. Or you can look up David E. Frost. My website is Well Past 40, and the 40 is FORTY, no dashes, hyphens, or whatever. Well Past 40, which kind of resonates with over 40, doesn't it, for your domain? But wellpast40.com, and Kaboomer is listed on there. But it can also, Kaboomer, KABOOMER, can be bought wherever fine books are sold. The bookstore named after the river, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, whatever. It's out there, as you mentioned, in your audiobook version of it. It's in audio, paperback, hardback, and ebook. It is an experiential journal of where I've been primarily since I blew out my back on September 11, 2001, by the way. That was my Phoenix moment when I hopefully turned my life around and maybe can help some other people. So Kaboomer is, and you just, there's not many Kaboomer references with Dr. Google. So if folks just type in Kaboomer, they'll probably find their way to a copy of it if they're interested.
Probably find it in the top 3, I'm sure.
It's a crowded field, but the audiobook that you're listening to, Brad, that's almost 8 hours. So, hopefully it's not droll, although it's this voice that you listen to. I tried to get a paid actor. Tom Hanks was busy, so I'm the narrator, and yet it has hopefully tips, tricks, and hacks for people to say what Henry Ford said. Whether you think you can or cannot, you're right. I want people to say, yes, I can. The little engine that could. Yes, you can. Even in one of the busiest decades of your life, in your 40s. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Well, I love it. Well, thank you, Dave, for jumping on the show with us. And I'm sure we'll pull you on in the future again. So,
hey, hopefully sometime in 2022, and I hope all your listeners get through the period when New Year's resolutions tend to fail, which is by Valentine's Day. So please pick specific, measurable, and achievable goals to be successful in your living habits, not crash and burn like 80% of all people who establish New Year's resolutions do. But I just wanted to share, resistance training is so important, as you know, but a lot of people don't realize these factors of senescence, sarcopenia, avoiding falls. I'm writing a sequel called Strong to Save. I believe in resistance training so much that I'll get you a copy when it gets finished.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Dave, once again, and our listeners. As always, I'll put all the links in the description of the podcast, and then we'll check you guys out next time.
Brad, thank you so much. Happy holidays, and to your listeners, thank you for listening. And again, yes, you can. You're an athlete. Yes, you can.
Awesome.